Stay tuned for Marie Torre with a special report on the commuter traffic jam. New York City, you can't get there from here at 7:30.
Manhattan, the West Side Highway slow in Midtown this morning. Queens, Triborough Bridge, Midtown Tunnel extra slow westbound into Manhattan. Westchester, heavy traffic now. Nassau County, Northern State, Southern State, the usual delays into Queens.
On an average weekday, almost 3 million people converge on New York City. They are called commuters. People who do not have to commute call them something else. Masochists. No doubt about it, the gateway is here. Extensive railroads, highways, waterways, and airways have helped Americans, and the people of the tri-state region in particular, move farther and faster than those of any country on earth. The average tri-state resident, for example, can expect to travel 700,000 miles in his lifetime. That's 5 times more than he traveled 50 years ago. The question is, how much more mobility can he reasonably expect? And how much more is he willing to pay for it in terms of money and natural resources? If that is, he survives the stress and strain of daily commuting, conditions that would be declared illegal if used for livestock, conditions that make it seem impossible sometimes to get there from here. Automobile commuters usually approach the majestic New York City skyline with entrance fee in hand and a sense of triumph. Look, Ma, we made it. This is, after all, the second morning toll. The first was paid with a minor form of despair. Almost 1 million commuters enter the city each day by motor vehicle. Among them is Richard Kessel, who lives in Belmore, Long Island, and teaches in Brooklyn, New York. How do you make the decision in the morning whether to go by Long Island Railroad or by car?
I try to listen to the radio, but it really happens more often than not that I'll hear the Long Island Expressway is tied up, and the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway is tied up, and the Southern State Parkway is tied up. So you say, I guess it's time for me to take the railroad. Then I'll hear, and for those commuters going through Jamaica, their trains are experiencing 15 to half-hour scattered delays. This is really what you have to experience every single day. And it's very difficult. You have no choice. You have to go to work. You take the Parkway and you get stuck. You take the railroad and you get stuck. So I think we're prisoners. We're trapped. There's really no way out anywhere. I've been stuck on the expressway for 2 and 3 hours at a time. You're seeing traffic now where there's not an accident. The worst thing that could happen on the Long Island Expressway is an accident. Because an accident will tie up 1 or 2 lanes, sometimes 3, where they'll have to stop all traffic.
So to come in from Belmore, Long Island, you have to figure about an hour and 20 minutes?
Well, an hour and 20 minutes at a good day. I think today's going to be more like an hour and 45 minutes, maybe even 2 hours. Sometimes you really literally want to step on the accelerator and just push everyone right into New York City, which probably would speed things up a little, but it hasn't something I've ever done, but I've thought about it.
Does it frustrate you?
Very much so.
How do you live with it?
Just put up with it because I got to go to work.
They should leave their cars home and take mass transportation. Guaranteed.
How was the trip in this morning?
Rather busy. Started at 7:20 and we're arriving at 25 of 10. That's just too long.
How do you live with it?
I don't. We live in San Francisco and we're very lucky. It's impossible. How can you live with it?
The living's not easy on the commuting front, not with the traffic congestion and the galloping cost of gasoline, if and when it can be bought. So if you live in Long Island and you decide to surrender that troublesome car, you take the battle-scarred Long Island Railroad. Its president and general manager, Francis Gabreski. He used to be a fighter pilot. If people came at you in droves, could you handle them now?
We certainly couldn't. They would be hanging out the rafters, windows, and it would be the worst, most chaotic scene that you have ever seen. Really, we don't, because we have people that are standees now with our normal complement, particularly during the peak time period. The peak time period was 8 to 9 in the morning, and it's about 4 o'clock to 5:30 in the evening. We are short at least 100 cars that I could put into operation today and fill every seat. Now, I have a plan, I have a program that I presented to MTA, I presented to Albany, and whoever will listen to me, I'll present my plan, but it's going to take a little bit of money. Somebody's got to bite the bullet, because it's not going to get better. It's going to only get worse for the future.
For northern New Jersey, the future's here. It couldn't be worse. 35 years of neglect on the North Jersey coastline have resulted in delays, dangers, and indignities for passengers. Bridges like the Navesink and Raritan are so ancient, it's risky for trains to cross them at more than 15 miles an hour. And look here. Watch closely. See how the track recedes under the weight of the train at the Red Bank, New Jersey station? This happens because of roadbed deterioration and rotting railroad ties. An invitation to disaster? Some Red Bank, New Jersey women seem to think so. They are members of Commuters' Wives, a group which fights for safe, clean, on-time service in behalf of their husbands. They often walk the rails to spot dangers. One of the more active members is Arlene Stump.
There's a piece of track up there that I can take you near the station, not far away from here, that we spotted this morning. It's unbelievable. If it doesn't come apart, it'll be a miracle. There's no ballast up there, there's no new ties, they all have to be replaced, and I thought this was part of a surfacing program.
Well, like I said before, I don't know. They don't tell me what their maintenance program is.
Sir, but how do you feel, though? I mean, you, as a member of this crew that's working on the tracks, how do you feel about having an inspection committee, such as this group, come see what you're doing?
Really, either way, it doesn't make any difference.
There are no feelings about it.
If that's what you feel you should do, then that's what you should do.
Mm-hmm. How about you, sir? How do you really feel about it when you go home?
I have nothing to say about it because I don't work for Conrail.
Who do you work for?
Hutch.
Well, but you're still doing some work that these women have some complaints about.
Doesn't bother me in the least. I figure they got their rights. I don't hold the door open for them anymore. They want their liberation. They got it. Right? That's the way I look at it. Now, if I see a woman on the road with a flat tire, I just keep right on driving.
The commuters themselves also have an organization under the name of SCOTS, Shore Commuters for On-Time Service. They keep tabs on lateness, breakdowns, and occasionally hair-raising derailments. Here, William Nesbitt shows how decay on the Red Bank rails makes it easier to pull a spike out of the ground than a radish.
This line has gone from a ridership of 15,000 to 8,000 in 2 years. People will ride if they can count on getting there. Last winter before last, I had to meet somebody in New York coming from London. I left home at 6:21 and got to New York past 11. Obviously, the person beat me from London to New York. Going home that night, I took I think it was the 650 out of Penn Station. I got home at 3 in the morning. Nobody cared. No information on the train. Conductor locked himself up in the engine, and the commuters sat there, and we froze. We have no heat, obviously, when we're not moving. They've been promising electrification since 1921. We had a bond issue 14 years ago, and somehow the money has disappeared. They went out and they bought 40 electric cars to the tune of $50 million 3 years ago before they ever had a plant or plans to put them on. Now, they admit they don't have enough money to electrify. So to save their political bacon, what they intend to do is electrify 5 miles of track from South Amboy to Matawan that will cost, just stringing 2 pieces of wire down the track, $21 billion. On that, they're going to put $50 million worth of electric cars and run them 5 whole miles. Of course, the railroad goes on another 40 miles past that.
The trend in railroads has been moving towards electrification, although some feel that electric trains are more subject to breakdowns than diesels. But diesels are not allowed at Penn Station because of ventilation problems. So at South Amboy, off goes the diesel, on comes the electric engine, causing about a 5-minute delay on the way into New York. But on the way back, it's usually a 10-minute delay. Diesels, by the way, have their motors running all night at the Bayhead terminus because they are so hard to start in the morning.
40 years ago, the train service was excellent. The trains ran on time. The condition of the coaches was much cleaner than it is today. And today, what do you got? The toilets, even if they're clean, have no water, they have no soap, they have no paper toweling. Really, the only good thing I can say about any of it today is the attitude of the train crew.
In the last month, Amtrak, who owns this railroad and who's now controlling the operation of this train, has ran a Metroliner into a track car. They also ran 2 trains together in Penn Station, right under the very eyes of the controllers. So the Scots organization is presenting for Amtrak its Rusty Spike Award for having ruined the operation of the Pennsylvania Railroad New York Division main line.
If you live in Danbury, Connecticut, and you want to go to a Broadway matinee, you catch the 1044 because it takes about 2 hours for the 65-mile trip. If you're planning on dinner in town, then you catch the 244. Miss that, and the next train is at 5:18, which will get you into Manhattan at 7:38, in time for supper, if it's on time. And unless you're planning to stay in town overnight, you must turn right around and go back, because the last train from Grand Central to Danbury, Connecticut leaves at 8:05. And that's what they call mobility.
I call this the Tunaville trolley when it breaks down and then we're bussed. And it's fun. It's like one big family. You know, everybody gets to know everybody and we're talking. A few close calls. We almost had an accident on the back road with the bus because the roads are so narrow. And then caught in a snowstorm, no transportation, you know, have to trudge back up to the house.
How do you like the commuting?
It's beautiful scenery, but it certainly could be a faster trip. 2 hours to go 50 miles is a little bit more than one would hope for.
Didn't you take this into consideration when you moved out there?
Well, yes, but originally I thought I could drive to Westport and take the train from there, but with the parking charges that have gone into effect in Westport and Fairfield and some of the other towns, it's easier to go from Bethel.
Well, it does have trouble making it sometimes, but they usually send a taxi or something. I've never gotten stuck completely, so they usually get you there.
What are these problems when they have to send a taxi?
Well, I remember one time when it got wet leaves under the wheels and it couldn't go.
At South Norwalk, it's the end of the line for the diesel run car from Danbury and a change to an electrified train, just as at South Amboy, New Jersey. Except here, the passengers switch, not the locomotives. If the Danbury-Tunaville should miss the connection during the non-peak periods, it could mean a wait of up to 1 hour for the next train to New York and Grand Central, where space limitations present problems deplored by New York Council President Carol Bellamy, also a member of the Metropolitan Transit Authority Board.
We have railroads railroad systems that have no places where we can park the trains when we don't need them. So we have to, the Long Island Railroad, for example, we have to take them all the way back out to Long Island to park them during the day before we bring them back into the city to pick up the passengers at night. We need a rail freight yard. It's just on and on. We lobby in Washington for dollars, and there's insensitivity. It's one thing after another.
Well, you know, the fuel situation being what it is, authorities are urging people to get out of their cars and into the railroads, into the buses. What are you going to do if the people really come at you?
They've started coming at us. Long Island Railroad's up by 10%, Conrail's up by 5%, the subways are up, the buses are up. We are running during the rush hours almost at a peak level. We clearly have some room off of the rush hours, and what we're going to have to do is to urge people to stagger their hours a bit.
Meanwhile, where does this all leave the average commuter?
I think it must leave the average commuter perplexed. They read in the paper that there is an energy crisis, but then if they know anything about the federal government, they find out that Carter's going to put more dollars into highways, fewer dollars into railroads and buses and subway systems. On the Conrail, we have a number of newly renovated cars. They are older cars, but newly renovated cars that we can put into business. We've got the state money to do it. It's in the budget, but we haven't gotten the federal dollars yet.
Those federal dollars also are anxiously awaited by Ken Smith, general manager of Conrail's metropolitan region. He hopes the federal dollars will get there before all the new commuters do.
When the people abandon their cars and come on the train, we'll be able to accommodate some of them, but not all.
But in a word, is it possible to describe the situation if more and more motorists get out of their cars and try to get on your trains?
In a word, it will be hectic.
Is hectic an understatement?
Much more than hectic, true.
Might it be pandemonium?
I wouldn't go that far, but somewhere between the two on the Richter scale, if you would.
Many commuters look for a way to beat the system. We came upon a man who actually found it.
I'm reverse commuting. So most people come in crowded and they're hassled and they have a lousy time of it. I go up there where it's beautiful, have a nice time, and go back to the city where it's exciting. So I sort of got a knock because I'm going in reverse.
The search for commuting happiness also seems to elude those who take the bus. The complaints, at least, are not much different from those voiced by the railroad commuters.
From what I hear from the rail commuters, their situation is as bad. The only thing I've heard at our hearings is that some people have seen roaches on the buses. I don't know if they've seen roaches on the trains yet. I guess, you know, which do you put up with? Which is worse? It's going from out of the frying pan into the fire, it seems.
We have broken seats, broken windows, reading lights that don't operate.
Well, we've been commuting 27 years, and my husband and I feel that it has been getting worse, not better. The buses break down many times. You stand on the highway, you're in danger. There's no one there to help you. You run to get another bus. I've had experiences where the police have said, go that way, and we've walked across highways to get to another bus.
Getting on the bus may not be a relief because the air conditioning may not be working during the summertime. During the wintertime, the heat may not be working. So you have to be lucky to be able to get on a good bus that's operating properly.
Do you take the aggravation out on your wife?
No, my children. I slap them around when I come home.
Something else rankles commuters on the Jersey bus lines, all of which are privately owned. Commuters there pay twice in a sense, with fares and tax money. Since 1970, the state and federal governments have given $300 million in subsidies to the bus companies. The state also has bought 1,500 buses, leased to the bus lines for $1 apiece a year, and it's going to buy 1,100 more buses. While talk persists about a state takeover of the Jersey bus lines, a 1975 audit showed that a substantial portion of the subsidy money was used not to improve service on the buses, but for such questionable items as old pension commitments and charitable contributions. Some people try to get away from the mass transit hassles by venturing into carpooling, but this is not all perfect either, and there are new problems today.
Not being able to find gas and not making it into the city, so to speak, you know.
What are the big advantages of this kind of an arrangement?
There's no time schedule.
We like the flexibility of having a car.
It costs the carpool members $60 a month, but for $64 a month, they could ride Conrail's mainline run to New Haven, which is unusual in that it features new trains and has one of the best on-time performance records in the tri-state area. But that's just one happy note in a symphony of discontent. Why? Can't the systems work? Metropolitan Transit Authority Chairman Harold Fisher.
Well, first of all, the complaints are not that the systems don't work. They work. We handle 5 or 6 million people a day in all of the systems. The harsh realities are that we don't have adequate commuter cars and subway cars. And right now we have a bigger problem. And the problem is that there is no American manufacturer who wants to make commuter cars or subway cars. And at the moment, the price for them is almost 3 or 4 times what the cost was when we bought cars. A commuter car is now $1 million if we get somebody to manufacture it and if we have the money.
Meanwhile, there's an urgency for people to get out of their cars and into the trains and buses. How are they going to do this if you can't accommodate all that want to travel now?
We can't provide comfort. We will be able to provide space and bring them into New York. But they're going to have to stand instead of playing pinochle. Some of them will be a little crowded, but we are utilizing every piece of equipment we have. And to buy new equipment will take 3 years after we get the money.
What you're saying actually is that if you live out of the city, you're not going to have a comfortable time of getting in.
Well, you now, if you live out of the city, don't have a comfortable time coming in because you're riding in your car. The only reason you're going to utilize our commuter railroads, in addition to those who do use it, is because somebody's taking your car away.
The agony of commuters would indicate that the dream of mobility has turned into a nightmare. How did this happen? Why aren't people treated as well as cattle on trains? The U.S. government has space and lighting conditions for the transport of animals, but there's nothing in the books about the care of human beings on the rails. A lack of concern that's also reflected in the federal government's expenditures. Listen to this. The U.S. budget for highways in 1979, over $8 billion. The federal budget for mass transit, less than $3 billion. About 1/3 of what is earmarked for those roadways on which travel cars we are not supposed to use now that there's a gasoline shortage. Another startler. The mass transit situation here is a reflection of the country's whole transportation system, which has come to be known as the least capable of any Western nation, hurting our economy and thus each American's purse. As commuters contemplate these unsettling thoughts and submit to the discomforts of commuting, they are told that it's all going to get worse before it gets better. Putting it another way, it's going to be no frills all the way, for now and the foreseeable future.